Typically, when you have a first message on a new year, it's about your goals and aspirations and where God's going to take us. And we're going to be in a sermon series called Good Grief. Okay? But I think God is going to teach us. I think if we don't know how to process pain, there's a lot of things. It doesn't matter what goals and what aspirations you have. If you don't process pain, it's going to come back and it's going to bite you. And probably most of you, in fact, I had some people last week mention it to me. When you think of good grief, what do you think of? There he is, Charlie Brown, Good Grief. Kind of made popular this little saying. It's an expression of shock or exasperation, surprise or dismay. It's a euphemism for good God. Today we see things like OMG or OGs. In fact, if you go on your cell phone and you try to get an image that you send by a text message, there's all sorts of things that cover good grief that is there. Grief means it's a heavy burden. It means to oppress. So how in the world could grief and oppression and a burden be good? And yet the Bible is clear and it's redundant about telling that God is able to come and be with us and show himself strong in the midst of our grief. By the way, since it is the beginning of the new year, here's a little cartoon by Charlie Brown. I should have broke this up a little bit. I'll just read it for you. Charlie and Lucy are meeting each other. He goes, "Happy New Year, Lucy." "Does that make it so?" she says. "Does you saying happy New Year make it happy? Just because you say it, does that mean it will be?" And then, okay, "Is this a guarantee? Is this?" And he says, "Oh, good grief." Sometimes you're going to meet people like that in life. They're going to kind of take the wind out of your sail. They're going to cause you grief. The Bible does tell us that grief God can use for his glory and for our good. And while no one invites grief or pain or sorrow in our life, grief can be good. For example, grief is good when we grieve over sin and its impact on people's lives and on our world. Grief can be good when it leads us to repentance and when we come to the throne of grace and receive God's forgiveness for it. Grief is good when it purifies our hearts and makes us more like Jesus. And grief is good when it makes us long for the promise of God and what we hope in for the new heaven and the new earth. Will there be no more tears and no more sorrow and no more pain? When goodbye will never be part of our vocabulary. C.S. Lewis said, if we find ourselves with a desire that nothing this world can satisfy, the most probable exclamation is that we were made for another world. But for now, we live in this world, and this world isn't heaven. So we have tears, and we have pain, and we have suffering, and we have brokenness. Grief belongs to the land that we reside in, the land of sin. And in this series, we're going to become familiar with the biblical action called lament. Now, if you just looked up a definition of lament, you would find that it means to mourn aloud or to wail, to express deep sorrow, mourning, or regret, and do it demonstratively. It's a passionate expression of grief and sorrow or complaint. We might just kind of dumb it down just a little bit. Lament in our world's view would be whining or complaining, or in some people's definition, posting on social media or venting. But there's something about lament that goes against what it means for us as followers of Christ. I mean, we're told to rejoice always, and again, I say it, rejoice. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving, into his courts with praise. This is the day the Lord has made. And what's the response, church? We'll be glad and rejoice in it. The joy of the Lord is your strength. We're to do all things without complaining and arguing. Yet, with all of those truths, lamenting is found throughout the Bible and through people who were very close to God. In fact, even Jesus lamented. I've been reading the book Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy by Mark Vroegop. And if you are going through your own season of grief, or if you want to help someone going through grief, I would highly recommend this book to you. It's written there in your notes there, so you can see the information that is there on it as well. And in that book, he says, to complain is human, to lament is distinctively Christian. So what is biblical lament? Biblical lament is a prayer in pain that leads to Christ. Lamenting is what people do who believe in the sovereignty of God, believe in his good plan, but life circumstances seem to go against that. In the words of the old hymn, when darkness seems to hide his face. What do I do in those times of darkness? Well, we know the hymn says, I trust in his unchanging grace, but we want to get to the trusting before we do the lamenting, and yet the Bible tells us lament is healthy for the soul. The memory verse that you're going to put to heart this week talks about pouring out your heart to God, for he is our refuge. You see, you won't pour your heart out to God if you don't believe he's a refuge. If you don't believe that he's good. You don't expose your heart to people you don't trust. And so lamenting is healthy. Jesus, we just came through this. He was fully human. He was touched with all the things. He was a man of sorrows, acquainted with our grief. When he went to Lazarus' tomb, and that verse that says Jesus wept, that wasn't for show. He knew the pain of loss. He knew what sin had done in this world. And he leaned into the pain and the sorrow. In fact, in the garden, he was grieved to the very point of death. And so we're going to learn through this series what it means to take to God our pain and come into a deeper trust. See, out of the book, Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy, it says, lament is a divinely given invitation to pour out our fears, frustrations, and sorrows for the purpose of helping us to renew our confidence in God. See, that's the goal. See, biblical lamenting goes beyond venting, expressing deep emotions or questions about life. Complaining is human, but lamenting is Christian. We express our emotion precisely because we believe and hold on to the sovereignty God. It may sound to others that you're doubting, but lament is actually an expression that leads to deeper faith. And we have some goals for this. It's in your notes, but I'll put them up on the screen. That is, the first goal is to identify and be honest about the losses, pain, regrets, and challenges in life. And we've all had them. Some had them early in childhood, and some it's been a continual season of loss or a recent loss that has gone in. And to be clear, grieving is not just about the loss of life. It's about the losses in life. And so we want to identify them. And at the end of this message, I'm going to ask you, and so be thinking about it, what are the losses? What are the regrets? What is the pain that you currently are dealing with or are not dealing with, but you have in your life? Begin by identifying what those are in life. Some of the most transformative events in our life involve loss. But we've all had it: missed opportunities, shattered dreams, broken relationships, death, health events, the loss of momentum. Can I just tell you that one of the things I'm grieving in our church family, before 220, we were on the top of the wave. We were going. It was come. You better come to church a little early to find a seat. And now we've lost some momentum. We're still doing many of the same things that we were doing back then, but it feels differently. When you're gone, it matters. When you're not in the community of believers, it matters. And there's a movement of God that happens. And I pray that, the good thing about waves is they come again. and I want us to be ready for that wave. But right now, it's just like, it's not just our church, it's nationwide, it's worldwide. There are many things that are happening where people are moving. See, we live in a world of bad news. But remember this, we're good news people. And so how do we live with the good news of Jesus when we are totally inundated in our personal life and our world with bad news? And we need to be honest and identify with it, because time doesn't heal all wounds. Intentional healing heals wounds. We need to be honest. We not just identify it, but we need to be honest, because here's what we often do with our pain. I'm over it. It doesn't affect me anymore. That's yesterday's news. But here's the question. If you're over it, why do you keep telling people you're over it? If it doesn't affect you anymore, why does it continue to be at the forefront of your life? If you don't deal with it, what you don't talk about controls your life. So we're going to identify and be honest about the losses, pain, and regret in our life. We're going to learn the practice and the discipline or art of lament. And I say that it's an art because an expression of our emotions. And those of you who are musically inclined or really like to express yourself in words, either by poetry or by journaling, or can sit down through music, there's wonderful things that you can do, and you can teach the rest of us how to express our emotions, because the arts often are able to convey and to be used as a vehicle to express ourselves in ways that just simple words aren't able to. See, we want to practice the discipline and the art of lament because the people who love God did. David, the man after God's own heart, has numerous psalms of lament in the Psalms. Moses was a friend of God, and he lamented. Job laments, and he was righteous in God's sight. Jeremiah, well, he wrote the book on lamenting. He's called it Lamentations. In fact, a little interesting thing I found out this week, that in the Hebrew Bible, the original Hebrew text, Lamentations is not it's not a translation into the English word lamentation. The title of the book in Hebrew actually means howl. Howl. And by the way, if you look at the New American Standard or you look at the NIV, the first words in chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 4 are howl. God, how can your city, Jerusalem, be in ruins? How can you let the Babylonians come and judge your people? How can we worship and serve you when our temple is destroyed? See, he knows all the promises of God and know all that God had promised to do with his people, but he's living in the reality of brokenness. And he wants to know how. Some of you want to know why. And we're told sometimes in Christian circles, you're not supposed to ask why. Let me help you out on that. Even Jesus asked why. On the cross, he quoted not Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." He could have. He knew it. But instead he quoted Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Why? So it's going to be a little uncomfortable at times. And at times you might see tears welling up in your eyes. So it's somebody next to you. I want to encourage you to have the ministry of presence, to be here for yourself, to be here for other people. And let's together corporately learn how to practice the discipline of lament. By the way, 1/3 of the Psalms are Psalms of lament. 150 Psalms, 1/3 of them are lament Psalms. And you know what? The book of Psalms was the original hymn book, the song book of the people of God. So 1 out of every 3 songs they sang would be to it. And Jesus lamented, by the way. He was grieved to the point of death. He was a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. And because of that, the Bible tells us he's able to come to the aid of us. He understands us. He's able to sympathize with our weaknesses. The book of Hebrews tells us he learned obedience to the things which he suffered. See, lamenting is biblical and distinctively Christian. And people who believe in the sovereignty of God pour out their heart to God. They lament. Now, you'll just have to look at your notes because I don't have a slide for this one. The other thing I want to do in this series is to encourage biblical community. For you to be plugged into any number of things, but whether it's an accountability partner, one-on-one, or whether it's a life connection, or maybe you want to start a grief group, maybe you need to come to Celebrate Recovery. It's a wonderful biblically based program that helps people do it. We have people that are there that are dealing with grief. It's part of what it does, your hurts and your habits and hang-ups. But I want you to encourage authentic biblical community. It's okay to cry. It's okay to come to worship and not be saying, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad. And it's okay to say, I'm hurting today. Come to me, Jesus said, all you who are labor and are heavy burdened. I'll give you rest. Listen, it's at those exact times when you don't feel that you need to press into God, into his goodness and his grace. There are individual laments in the Psalms. There are numerous congregational laments in the songs. But hear this, our grieving is not to be done in isolation. You are going against your Creator when you hide in your pain. You take it to God, and you let him deal with it with his body, just like your sins were dealt with on the cross. And right now, his body, the physical evidence of his body here on earth is the church. He called it that. I didn't. He called it that. And confess your sins to one another so that you can be healed. And then lastly, we want to grow spiritually and come alongside others in their grief. Some of you need to be here not because of what you've gone through right now, but because of somebody else and what they're going through. And you're going to be able to step into their life. And we're going to talk through things to do, things that biblically, God who understands us better than anybody else, knows how to do that. Now, right now, we're going to read one of the Psalms of Lament. It's Psalm 13. I asked you to turn there earlier. Would you stand in honor of the Word of God? Psalm 13, and we're going to walk down through this psalm and give some various characteristics of what a lament looks like. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer me, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. My enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me. Lord, this is your word. You want to inform us, but more than that, you want us to transform us by your word. So, Lord, as we read these texts, help us to enter them ourselves. Help us to put our emotions and our will and our thoughts into them. And let you come and bring your grace into our life as we pour out our heart to you. In Jesus' name, amen. You're probably like me, I would assume, that when you read a psalm like Psalm 113, you start reading it and you get a little uncomfortable, and if you make it to the end, the words that you highlight are the last. But I will thank God for his unfailing love. I will sing those praises, because those are the ones we want. We want those encouraging things, not those things that bring us into a window to our own souls. But there are some characteristics of lamenting that I want to draw our attention to. And the first thing is this: lament is calling upon the Lord. Now that seems pretty, it's praying is what lamenting is doing, and that seems kind of common, but lament turns toward God when we're sorrowful and we feel hopelessness or grief or pain, when you're tempted to run away from him. It is an intentional calling upon the Lord when you want to isolate. And that's one of our problems of our human nature, is we want to pull back. We want to withdraw from it. Instead, I'm going to press in to God. And I see this in Psalm 13:1. In fact, many of the Psalms of Lament, you'll see this. How long, Lord? Just stop right there. Lord. And I want you to notice this. There's something else that I just want to remind you of. The word Lord here is in all caps, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. Whenever they translated the Bible, the word Lord means Yahweh or Jehovah. This is the name that was revealed. See, God revealed who he was and what he would do by the names he gave us. And there are three primary names in the Bible. The first one is Jehovah or Yahweh. That's the name he gave to Moses. I am that I am. I am the self-existent one. I'm the one who always was, always is, and always will be. So when this psalmist is calling out, when David's calling out to the Lord here, he's saying, He's saying, how long the one God who always was and always is and always will be, the one who's not affected by this world here, you are completely other. You are the I am. That's the one I'm pouring out my heart to right now. Now, just real quickly, two other primary names for God. One is just God, capital G-O-D. You're introduced to that in the book of Genesis very early on. God created the heavens and the earth. That's the Hebrew word Elohim. It means to be the all-powerful one, the creator, the faithful one. So you will see, whenever you see capital G-O-D, that's what it's referring to, especially in the Old Testament, Elohim. And then the other one is Lord with a capital O, capital L, little o, little r, and little d. And that is Adonai, which is master, or the one who is in authority. Master, Lord, or the one who is in authority. So that was just a little thing. You might want to write that in, the places of your Bible. That will help you understand what is going on. But again, here's what I want to tell you. Lament is not a sign of unbelief or weakened faith. But I want you to hear this. Silence may be. You not pouring your heart to God may be a sign that you can't trust God, or you're not going to trust God. Lament takes your questions and your complaints and your struggles and places before God. And it can be uncomfortable. But you're bearing your soul to the one who came to save it. And so I can without reservation run to God. Jesus came to us, and we just celebrated Christmas. He came very humbly so we could go to him boldly. And don't think your burden of grief is unusual. In this world of sin, grief is common. Hear this. This isn't heaven. We somehow get this mixed notion that if we do the right thing, that God should give us a pass on the suffering of this world. It's not the case. Sometimes you will suffer because of your faith. Jesus taught us to pray, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as is in heaven. Why would he tell us to pray for heaven's will to be done on earth? Because it's not always done here on earth. You don't always do it. I don't always do it. And we live in a world that is in rebellion to God. So the good news people in the bad news world pray that heaven's will be done on earth. See, heaven is going to be a place where there's no more sorrow, no more pain, no more suffering, no more death. That's heaven. We live on earth in a world of sin. We have sin and death and pain and broken relationships. And the Bible tells us that because we are looking forward to when God is going to restore everything, that notice what 1 Thessalonians 4:13 says. And now, dear brothers and sisters, we want you to know what will happen to believers who have died, so that you will not grieve like people who have no hope. You're going to grieve. You should grieve. Grieving is healthy, but you grieve with hope. You need hope when things aren't right. You need hope when there's ashes, when your dreams go up in smoke. You need hope when you're in pain. In heaven, you won't need hope. You'll be living it. Pain has a way of waking us up to our need for God. It shines a spotlight on how powerless we are to control everything. A.W. Tozer said, "It is doubtful that God can greatly use a man until he has hurt him deeply." C.S. Lewis said it this way, "Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures. He speaks to us in our consciousness. He shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." Someone said it this way, suffering is the quickest route to God. Because that's when you're most open. If you're ever going to be open to God, that's you want change. You want someone outside to come in and fix what's going inside. Jesus, when he was meeting with his disciples before his death and burial and resurrection, he gave some incredible things that we can hang on to. Let not your heart be troubled. Chapter 14, John. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If we're not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you be also. I give you my joy. I give you peace. Peace not as the world gives, I give unto you. He said, I'm going to send you the Comforter, the Holy Spirit, that's going to come alongside in this world of sin. And he's going to convict you concerning righteousness and judgment and truth. Wonderful things. But he also said this, John 16:22. So with you now is your time of grief. But I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take your joy away. Verse 33, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. One of his first public messages, Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. The blessing's not in the mourning, the blessing is in the comforting of God. I don't very often use the paraphrase, the message, but I thought it said pretty well. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. Let that sink in. You pour out your heart to God with your pain and your sorrow, your grief, your questions, so he can then begin pouring his grace into your life. This is what Jesus did on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? He prayed a prayer of pain that led to deeper trust. So lament includes calling upon the name of the Lord, but also it means pouring out your heart to God. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts day after day and sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Honestly, if we were to have that conversation with someone in the lobby, one of our reactions might be to say, how do I get out of this conversation? We are uncomfortable with this kind of talk. But what I'm trying to teach you, and you see it repeatedly in Scripture, is that people were honest about their feeling. Now, listen, I don't think you should go and tell everyone this stuff, but you should pour your heart out to God, and you should have some people that you trust that you can say, this is the way I am right now. Listen, this is what God calls us to move us into community, to move us away from our self-sufficiency to God's sufficiency. And if you believe in the sovereignty of God, you're going to believe that God has placed people in your life to help you through your pain and sorrow and grief in life. It's called the church. Not being involved in the church family is a sign of unbelief. Sharing your heart moves you toward God and not away from him. But as you come to him, you come with your pain, not your pride. See, God is opposed to the proud. James 4, chapter 4, verses 6 to 8. God is opposed to the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. So humble yourselves before God. Resist the devil and he will flee for you. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. When you begin pouring out your heart to God, there's going to be a fellowship with God that you don't experience any other way. Peter writes this again in 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 5 to 8. God gives grace to those who are humble, but he sets himself opposed to the proud. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, and in good time he'll lift you up. Cast all your cares, all your worries, all your burdens, all your anxiety upon him, because you know that he cares for you. People who believe in the sovereignty of God pour their heart to God. Lament or complaint is not meant to be an end in of itself. You got to be careful you don't get stuck in complaining. But if you don't move beyond complaint to the sovereignty of God, lament begins to lose its purpose and its power in your life. So you got to get it out. There's some things you got to get out so you can have room for other things in your life. We packed it. I carried the Christmas boxes that my wife packed. She packed up the Christmas decorations. But there were some things we had to move around. We're one. Okay, all right. Things she had to move around. We need a little bit bigger container. Do we have something else to be put in here and stuff? There's something, you see this all the time. There's things you've got to let go of. There's things you have to work through. There's things you have to identify and be honest about so that God's grace can come into you. And listen, I just know this. Some of the struggles we have today come from unsettled grief and unresolved loss in our life. So we've got to see the value of grief. You know what we do in our society? Our culture does not grieve very well. We move on to the next gadget, the next thing, the next relationship, the things we try to medicate it. We try to, push it out of our life in different ways. We have all these other sensory things that can pour into our life to move on to the next thing instead of dealing with it. But listen, pain has a way of working its way out in our life. And it shows itself up in our relationships, our relationship with God, and our relationship with others. My comfort in my suffering, the psalmist said, is this: your promise preserves my life. Now, when Jesus prayed Psalm 22, my God, why has you forsaken me? He knew the entire psalm. And so I put the rest of Psalm 22, particular verses that show the lament that is happening. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out to you by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. I understand when he was hanging on the cross, darkness came over the land. I mean, darkness was literally physically present, and he was in a dark cloud, if you will. Now, this is the same Jesus that heard when he was baptized, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. On the Mount of Transfiguration, this is my Son, listen to him. This is the same Jesus who was in the garden, grieved to the point of death, and an angel had to come and strengthen him, and he prayed desperately. He said, Father, if there's any other way, take this cup from me. Our faith suffers when we don't lament, when we don't take our pain in prayer to God that leads to trust. See, what ends up happening is we close off a bit of ourselves to the one who is our healer. You have a diagram. One side, we live in this world and it is filled with grief. On the other side is the promise of God's grace. And sometimes those two things seem so far away, and we say, why or how, God, is this happening? And lament is the bridge that brings those two things together. Lament is what moves us from the why of grief. In fact, you could put on top of that little arrow there, why. Those are the why questions. To the who. Put that over the grace, I think, the who, to God's person. Lament is the bridge between that moves us out of our own grief and isolation to God and his grace and his goodness and his mercy. Which brings us to this. Lament also includes boldly asking God to intervene. Look on me and answer me. Lord, my God, give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death, and my enemy will say, I have overcome them, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. See, he begins to ask for God's intervention in his life, not only to change the circumstances, but also to give him light and understanding. Psalm 119, verses 66 to 68, and verse 71 says, teach me good discernment and knowledge, for I believe in your commandments. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. There's some things I don't understand, God, and it's against the crucible of pain and anguish and suffering that it's opened my mind and my heart to new things about what you're doing in me and through me and in this world. Then he says in verse 71, it is good that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. I mean, look at the book of Habakkuk. It's only 3 chapters. Oracle of Habakkuk, the prophet of God. How long? He begins. How long, God, must I call out to you and you do not answer? And then God answers and he doesn't like the answer. And so he begins pushing back again. And then he says in chapter 2, I'm going to stand on the ramparts and I'm going to watch what you're going to say to me. And then in chapter 3, what is it? He's recounting all God's goodness in the past. And all of a sudden he says, yet I will praise him. Though there are no figs on the vine, though my circumstances don't change, I'm going to trust you. It's a beautiful example of going from trusting the sovereignty of God to honestly coming up with our answers, our questions to God, rather, and maybe not even getting the answer we want, but somehow. See, I wish I could show you it. I could just say, you do this and this and this, but it's a work of God in your spirit. It's not a formula. It's The presence of God. See, Paul talks about it this way in Philippians chapter 3. I want to know God and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering. I read that, and I don't want to know the fellowship of his suffering. I really don't. But if I'm going to know the power of his resurrection, I'm going to learn things the same way Jesus did. And Hebrews tells us that Jesus learned obedience to the things he suffered. But I'm going to boldly ask God to intervene. Notice this, Ecclesiastes 7:4. The heart of the wise is in the house of the morning. The person that learns to lament, the person that learns that there's value in mourning and grieving over the sin of this world and in this world, our own sin and other people's sin and the fallen nature of man. By the way, the world, the scriptures tell us that even all creation is groaning. This world isn't heaven. But there's a wisdom that comes in that. But the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. Well, let's just eat, drink, and marry our way through life. You're a fool if you don't deal with your pain. Psalm 22, 19-21, Psalm Jesus prayed on the cross. But you, Lord, do not be far from me. You are my strength. I feel forsaken, but you are my strength. Come quickly to me. I'm being crucified. Deliver me from the sword. My precious life from the power of the dogs. Rescue me from the mouth of lions. Save me from the horns of the wild oxen. And you know how this story ends. Jesus didn't get saved. Jesus still died. And aren't you glad he did? Without death, there is no resurrection. In order for a resurrection to happen, there has to be a death. And God, our God, is the God who is Lord over death and the grave, and he is the God of the resurrection. And then lament includes, and concludes, you might say, with choosing to trust God. It's a choice. And I want you to notice this little phrase, but. That's a big word. But. Sometimes you'll find the word yet. Sometimes you'll find the word however, or even so. But it's a transition from my pain and my sorrow and my grief and my questions to God, taking them and boldly asking God to intervene. And it is the bridge that moves us, if you will, in lamenting, moves us over to the grace side. He says there's three things of why I'm choosing to trust in God. I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation, and I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. In one of the difficult times of my life, this phrase came to me: anchor in truth and let your emotions settle around it. My emotions need a tether. If I don't tether my emotions, they will be all over the map. They will go, and listen, emotions move you. Emotion, okay? They move. They're moving you somewhere. And they're either going to move you toward God or away from God. But I'm going to tether my emotions, and I'm going to anchor in truth and let my emotions settle around it. Because emotions can be settled. They can be controlled. Part of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. But yet, however, marks the spot where belief and pain coexist. Trusting in who God is and what he's done and what he's promised. I choose to keep trusting God. See, not only is God close to the brokenhearted and he saves those who are crushed in spirit, Psalm 34:18, but our God heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. Our God is the wounded healer. He was wounded for us. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was stricken by God for you and me. And the goal of lamenting is not to get over your grief. You'll have people say that. I'll just get over it. Maybe you said it for yourself. I just need to get over this. But the goal of lamenting is not to get over it. It's to get through it. And allow God to reshape our hearts in the process. You need lamenting in your life. 3 affirmations of trust. Let's go through them real quickly here. I am loved. I trust in your unfailing love. from the book Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy. Every Christian has a record of God's steadfast love. To be a Christian means trusting in what God says and who he is. We come to faith that way. We trusted the Bible to be true. We believe forgiveness is possible for those who receive Christ. Trusting in God's grace welcomed us into God's family. But that was the beginning. Christians don't leave behind trusting God after coming to faith. On the contrary, being a follower of Jesus requires that we walk through life in continual trust. And seasons of suffering are no different. So I can think, I'm loved. God settled his love for me and for you when he sent his one and only son to die for our sins. If you ever question God's love, look at the cross. God did not spare his own son, but he delivered him up for his own. He says, I love you this much. And because he loved us that much, and because he sent his son, here's another affirmation that I can have. I am saved. My heart rejoices in your salvation. Tim Keller was great pastor, writer, did many gifts to the church by his understanding and his works, books that he wrote and messages and interviews and so forth. He had a bout with cancer, thyroid cancer in the early 2000s, thyroid cancer. Doctor told him at that point, we're going to be able to get you through this. You're going to live through this, okay? Then in 2020, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And the doctor told him, you're going to die from this. There is no cure. He talks honestly, and you can go and you can listen to certain interviews from him if you search it online. He said, I had to learn to live with scanxiety. The next scan, one scan would tell you there's been no growth, things are moving here, but all of a sudden, all these emotions. And he says, really, my facing with death brought me into a greater prayer life, and I learned to pray the Psalms. Maybe some of you want to start out this year reading the Psalms with new ways. By the way, you could search just the Psalms of Lament, and you can get a listing of it yourself. I didn't have room to put it on my notes, have other things that I need to share with you. But listen, I am saved. And here's what Tim Keller said when they say, how are you facing death? Here was a simple reply, but profound. If the resurrection of Jesus Christ really happened, everything is going to be all right. See, what was he doing? He was going back to what he truly believed about God. You see, how you deal with suffering and pain and loss says a whole lot about your theology. It probably says more about what you believe about God than anything else. And here's the last thing. God is good. I will sing of the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. Listen, I don't know what you're going through, and it doesn't matter how deep you think your problems are right now. Sometimes we say, I think this is the end of the world. I just want to tell you, whatever you're going through, it's not the end of the world, because I've read the Bible. At the end of the world, Jesus shows up. You will know it's the end of the world when Jesus shows up, okay? One day, Jesus is going to settle the score. One day, he's going to pay off all the debts, and he's going to heal all the hurts. And the Bible says that day God will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death and no mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things have passed away. And we ought to look forward to that, and we ought to hasten its coming. But what do you do when you live between grief and grace? Between what is called the sweet by and by and the nasty here and now? When everything is broken in life and doesn't seem to make sense and it incredibly hurts, what do we do in the middle time? Rick and Kay Warren had their 27-year-old son in 2013 who battled mental illness all those 27 years commit suicide. Rick Warren will greatly impact where we go through as here, because he and Kay have shared their own journey with grief and how God had come alongside of them and things that they have learned. And you can see where we're going for the next 6 weeks or so in our plan. And we're going to use, and I do need to do this. By the way, you see at the end of Psalm 22 where Jesus declares and gives praise to his Father in Psalm 22. You're probably familiar with the stages of grief. And Denial, anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance. That's been around since about 1969. By the way, denial is the first stage, and Sherry Johnson's doing a lesson on denial tonight. You need to be here for that lesson. If you're going through grief yourself, or if you know someone's going through grief, this would be a great insight to come. Come just to the open group there at 7 o'clock. But a great opportunity. But see, here's the thing about grief. See, the stages of grief aren't a roadmap. They get all convoluted, and that sometimes you think you're done with anger, or the emotion that have, and then all of a sudden you come back to it. Sometimes you're laughing, sometimes you're crying. I like this little diagram that I found. But we're going to be going through the biblical part of grief. See, those are 5 stages. I think that's good. But when we go from the shock and the sorrow and the struggle and the surrender and the sanctification and the service, moving in, because God does not waste the hurt. What I want to remind you of is to identify and be honest about the losses, pain, and regrets and challenges in life. Your task, your homework for this message is to honestly write down what are your losses, your challenges, your pain in life. It may be something from your childhood. It may be something that you just experienced today. Write it down. Write down 3, 4, 5 things. And begin identifying that and be honest with it. I came across this quote. Worship team, go ahead and come on up. There are really only 2 stages of grief. Who you were before and who you are after. Boy, that's a great quote. Here's the good news. You get to choose who you are after. You can choose to lament, to take your pain and move it to God and let God put his purpose and his grace in your life. I'm not telling you your pain's going to be taken away, but God will help you through it. One of the things that you see in the Psalms of Lament is that they are songs to God, and they give voice to what we're saying. He said, I will sing of the goodness of God. So we're going to close the service by singing of the goodness of God. And I want you to ask yourself in this, what am I grieving? What have I lost? What lament do I need to take to God?
I count on one thing, the same God who never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will. I count on one thing, the same God who never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will all my days. Yes, I will. I choose to praise, to glorify name above all names, that nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify name above all names. nothing can stand against. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will all my days. Yes, I will all my days. Yes, I will.
As we close, let me give you 2 more challenges. One, I want to encourage you to be here each week as we go, if at all possible. I know you can watch online, but listen, you can watch online at any time. There's something that happens in community when God's people come together that you can't get every other time. So come, try to do that, and also be thinking, do you know someone that is grieving? Someone that could hear the healing counsel of God's word as we begin going through this process of seeing how grief affects us and how God comes with us and he comes near us and that he's for us by giving his grace. Father, our heart's cry is today we're going to identify and be honest about the pain, loss, and disappointment of life. And begin with the purpose of taking it because we believe in you. We believe you are the God who watches over your word to perform it. And precisely because we believe and we have seen your hand, we're going to pour out our hearts toward you. We thank you. So today, yes, I will trust in you. In Jesus' name, amen.